Yeah. It sets the mood.
It really does. It's kind of hard to start these two. I never know if we should like go right into it or if we wait till people get here or what's the mood, you know?
Look at that. 2 viewers. What's up, viewers? Thanks for tuning in right on time,
Yeah, the
punctual.
early adopters. Shout out to our hey, come say hey. Come if you're one of the first people in, give us a comment and we'll say hey to you.
Yeah, we want to give you credit for being here right on time.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited for this. There's a lot of overall EV news. You know, it's kind of crazy how much happens in a week, which I'm realizing. Like when we do these streams, it's like I'm also playing a game in my head of like, would this be better to like share for the stream? Should I make a video on it and stuff? So I'm leaning more into saving most of the stuff for the stream. So there's so much to get into today, which I'm excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, our Google Doc was just ever growing this week.
Definitely. Darren can't wait for his R1T. Still,
that might be our cue. There's our first story of the week right there.
Right. Joe, I'm changing your name real quick. You can edit that if you want, but we were both named Larry there for a second.
Oh, good catch. Yeah, let me see if I can edit that.
Yeah, let's talk about it. That's kind of like the main thumbnail we had up here is the news on the R1T. I think those are our two big headlines to get into today. Is just like a for those of you watching this either on delay or here now. So that's the two biggest things we have to talk about for sure is the Rivian news. They're joining Ford and raising some prices. In a spoiler, I think it's a little bit better than Ford, for instance, but we'll talk about that shortly. And then, of course, the EV tax credit news, which there's so many ins and outs and interesting questions I'm getting that honestly I don't have an answer to. So I'd like to pause them to you and we can dive into all that.
Yeah, so for sure.
So Joel, answer them all.
Well, that's not a great sign because I was looking forward to picking your brain on it. But I think, spoiler alert, I think what we're going to learn is that both of us are relatively in the dark when it comes to what vehicles are actually going to qualify for this credit next year. But so starting with the Rivian, you could call it a price hike. You could call it, updated trim availability. But I first heard of it on the Rivian Stories YouTube channel. I don't know where you first heard of it, if you had read an article or anything, or did you also see it on YouTube?
I actually saw it via I'm in a bunch of Facebook groups that I'm actually starting to like. It's like I'm in a Rivian one, I'm in the Ford Lightning one, I'm in the Silverado one now too. Someone actually just invited me to that, so thank you to I forget who that was, but that's where I saw it, and people are just like stirring, and there's some funny stuff there. I wish I would have screenshotted some of those, but yeah, that's where I found out.
Yeah, I was watching a Rivian Stories video, and they had on a Rivian employee who it seems like they go way back with. They've been in this process for a while. But he basically was saying the adoption of that affordable Explore package. So there was Explore and Adventure. Explore was the more affordable one. He said the adoption rate of the Explore package was very low. They pried and tried to get a number, a percentage. He wasn't allowed to disclose that. But yeah, ultimately, he said the adoption rate was so low. And if the goal is to get as many trucks out the door as quickly as possible, it made more sense to just stop making the Explore package.
Right. So real quick before you get on from there, I'm wondering how much of that do you think is the perfect PR thing to say versus, I guess, the truth of the matter?
I think the fact that he wasn't sharing like data regarding trim popularity, and in fairness, Ford has done the same thing. They won't disclose where the interest lies between their 4 trims. But I also think Ford is purposefully being ignorant about it. That's why they never asked us what trim we wanted when we reserved. Sure. So I do think it's mostly PR. But at the end of the day, the price barrier to entry for a Rivian just went up by, I think, $5,500.
Yeah.
So imagine if you had waited, what is it now, 3 years? You've had your reservation deposit tied up for that long. I'd be pretty ticked if I was one of those people that wanted the Explorer package.
Sure, and it's an emotional thing. I think that like we're all dealing with a little bit. Anyone who's even had a Tesla reservation, like I remember my Tesla reservation. I was checking that like timeline screen that you get in the app every day, like no matter what. So you have a lot of like excitement into it. So if you were dedicated to that certain price, I totally get why you're upset. But I think something, and I was texting you about this. I said, at the very least, you're just forced to upgrade, right? So you're getting things out of it. I think there were
Right.
some other separate things that went up in price, but if
Mhm.
we're just talking about the trim change, where that they got rid of the base trim and they have the adventure trim, which is above it. Is it Explorer at the bottom and then Adventure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Explorer is gone
Mhm.
and you pay $5,000 more, but you get more out of it, right? So it's
Yeah.
hard to be that. Um, you don't get why people are upset totally, but at the same time, it's like hard for me to like, I guess, empathize. You know what I'm trying to say, because it's not just a straight up price hike. It would be like for us if like they discontinued the Pro and you could only buy the XLT. It only
Right.
starts the XLT now. Like, would it kind of suck? I guess a little bit, but you still get more stuff.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree. It's not like you're not getting anything for the money. I think when you compare it to the price hikes that we recently saw with Ford, obviously this is a better shine for Rivian than it is Ford,
Yeah.
for the reasons you just said. You are getting more for your money, and also I'd have to imagine if your income allows you to consider $65,000 trucks, you're probably also, when your budget for a vehicle is that high, $5,000 probably isn't going to be what breaks the camel's back. But
No.
um, but I
And
just thought it was interesting how they let that information out. They made it seem like it's not a big deal, but I'm sure for some people it is. I don't know.
I totally get it. And they have dipped their toe in this water before. I mean, we obviously all know that they've tried to raise prices in the past. And I think their back was against the wall and they're like, something has to give. Like, we tried raising prices. Everyone got mad at us and we totally backed down and just caved, which is a cool thing to do, which I'm glad they did. But they're sincerely hurting from infrastructure prices going up or material goods going up, so they had to do something about it, and their move um, probably was the best way to handle it, honestly. Like, I'm trying to like empathize with people who have the reservation, but I kind of am on Rivian's side, I think, just because I don't know what I would have done differently. They're giving you
Right.
something for the cost. And
Hmm.
I'm reading Darren's comment in here. Darren Brazil let us up. He's got a solid point. If you already own a Rivian, when prices go up, that's a great thing. I mean, again, we're
Right.
talking about Tesla. When I had that, when the prices went up, that just meant the value of the car I owned technically went up. So it's
Right.
kind of good news when that happens overall. So
Yeah.
um, it's hard because I definitely see why people are upset again, but it
Hmm.
makes sense.
Well, and it doesn't seem like it's going to push them out of the availability for the EV tax credit, since it's going from what, like now the cheapest one you could buy went from 65 or 68 to 72 or something. So they're still well under the
Yeah.
80,000. So that's another like glass half full situation.
It's a great point. And I remember some people thinking before they actually dove in, like, oh, does this price or does this make sure this is an interesting point that I actually am glad you brought up. Because some people had the theory that they would raise it to the point where there's no vehicles that would be eligible for the tax credit so that people don't just all choose that lowest price vehicle and that they can actually upsell and have different variety of options. And I don't know if it was just like a fear thing that people were thinking that, but I thought that was actually in the plans a while ago when we were talking about this tax credit stuff. So
Right.
they left it, yeah, like you said, they left one that's still eligible for the tax credit. So if you're in that like 65K range, you could still have something all said and done that isn't
Hmm.
too bad,
Right.
for cost.
Now, maybe this is a good way to organically segue into
Good.
talking about the EV tax credit. which I will just give the bare bone facts. My understanding is that it was signed into official law on Tuesday.
Yes.
So all the videos we made where we said it's not a law yet, it's not a law yet, we can now update that it is official. And so it theoretically should take effect for any EV that you, for any qualifying EV that you purchase after January 1st of 2023. Does that sound right so far?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But here's my question for you, and maybe this is the start of a bigger conversation, but I think what's hardest to determine if a vehicle qualifies, it boils down to that pesky battery component,
Sure.
and where those are sourced. And so, do you know of a good resource? Like if I said I want to buy a Kia EV6, like do you think that should be public knowledge? Like, is that where a vehicle's batteries are sourced, or how can a consumer make an informed decision?
Yeah, so I don't have one yet. I have a couple Reddit threads that I can link in this video a little bit later once I refine them, where people are making their best educated guesses. However, nothing's for sure. It's not like clear information that exists right now, and that's the problem that everyone's having. Like everyone has great estimates, and we can do that as well. I mean, my video was just like I made a video about the tax credit that just kind of went over what like electric's list was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we can really go off of right now. However, all said and done, it's leaning towards looking like the ones that are like the GMs, the
Mm-hmm.
Fords, and a couple other sprinkles here and there will still be eligible for like our neck of the woods. Rivian, I think they all will still work
Mm-hmm.
unless they're like, I bet even some of them are doing the math. I bet they're like, well, we get this from, I don't know, China, this is from Minnesota, and then
Right.
like different elements could definitely be different areas. So who knows right now? It's probably like that's why I think there's not a clear resource, is because I
Right.
don't think some of the actual producers know.
Well, and I guess that would be my request, or something I think needs to become a reality.
Mm.
You know, this podcast is not me getting on a soapbox, but just the thought that pops into my head is that if we're going to make informed decisions as consumers, we need that information available. I don't think that's too much to ask. So I'm challenging you, Ford and Chevy and all these manufacturers, only because I can already anticipate I'm going to be signing the paper for my Lightning, let's say in October of 2023. And if he says, oh no, this doesn't qualify because of where the batteries come from, that's going to be a frustrating moment. And I don't foresee a way to avoid that at this moment. I don't know how we could avoid that.
That's right. So, talking about that too, let's just dive into it. So I was just all of a sudden done not thrilled with where we ended with the tax credit. It was just an overall bust in my opinion. Um, what I really wish would have happened is that we just kept the existing ones, maybe lifted the cap, or
Right.
just let it phase out, unless we were actually going to put some heavy thought into one, because this seemed rushed. It seemed like people wanted it. The other one was ending, so they just said, we'll throw you a bone or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my vibe of the thing, because there's a lot of things like the battery, like they threw that in there. It just seems like a random thing that some guy fought for, and we don't have a
Mm-hmm.
clear reason of why it's in there. So it's a
Right.
bummer. The thing I'm most upset about is, I don't know if you read about the point of sale not being fully in effect probably until 2024. So all of us buyers of a Lightning, for instance, you
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're getting your order soon, you might just have to claim it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that was me crossing my
Oh,
fingers.
I thought you were raising your hand.
Yeah.
But that's what I gauged from at least a couple articles that I saw. And that's a big wake up call for us about to buy a vehicle, because we're in a very much a gray area. This
Mm-hmm.
whole, can you still get partial of the old tax credit,
Yeah.
especially Ford buyers, because they still are eligible.
Mm-hmm.
GM and everyone else is just, wait until January before you buy your vehicle for sure. You were
Right.
going to say something?
Well, I guess my question would be, so if you do, even if it's not point of sale in 2023, you will still get the credit. It would just kind of feel like how it is currently. You would have to file a specific form when you do your taxes the following year. Like you wouldn't miss out completely
No, no, no,
on
no,
the
no,
credit,
no,
right?
no. Sorry, you not missing out. It's just not getting to take advantage of that, like straight off your. So if you're financing it, it'd be really helpful to just have that taken off, so your monthly payments
Right.
aren't a ton. Because strictly talking, people who are financing this vehicle, yeah, you do your down payment, but then you'll have the rest finance, and then if you
Hmm.
get the 7,500. You could then put that back into your lease and then or your payments and then get that lowered or whatever you wanted to do. And then another element of that is coming from, uh, I totally lost my train of thought.
No, well, and I think that just goes to show how
Sorry.
complicated this process still is. Even though in on paper it looked like they didn't tweak very much, the financial reimbursement amount is the same.
Hmm.
They removed the cap, which sounded like great news. Then again, for those of us that were interested in Fords, um, but Steve actually touched on something in the chat, which I found really interesting when it came out. And I don't know if you saw any Reddit posts about this,
No,
Larry,
yeah, quite a bit. Yeah.
but Rivian kind of was going into damage control mode before the bill was even signed into law,
Hmm.
saying as long as you have a binding written agreement, you'll still get the old tax credit, regardless of whether or not we qualify for the new one. I just found that whole thing interesting. It gave off kind of a scrambly vibe. They were like, okay, we don't want to scare off a ton of our potential buyers by losing the tax credit.
Yeah.
So they were doing like PR damage control mode.
And a couple,
Um,
I think Fisker did that as well with ocean reservation holders, and it's still up in the air if some of those are binding. I think that was a big thing that I read is like some of them should be for sure, but it might not actually lock you in.
right.
I remember how I just totally brain farted a second ago. I remember what I was going to say now. Um, if you were doing the old tax credit, I wanted to bring up the fact that if you don't have the 7,500 taken out of your tax credit to be a credit, then you also won't even get the full credit. So that's another thing to consider. If you are on this like bridge right now of like, hey, do I just push till the new one's in effect? I know if I buy it before the end of the year, I could just get the old one. Take a look at how that stuff works with your previous year's tax credit, or you look at your previous year's taxes, because there's a lot of people I hear, like I get emails sometimes or comments on my YouTube channels of saying like, hey, I just bought this vehicle and I only, got $3,000 back or whatever. So if you only make, what is it? I think you have to make like $52,000 to $60,000 a year, something like that, depending on how you do your taxes. Because if
Right.
you're joint or whatever, it's differently. But that's roughly what you need to make to get the full 7,500 of the existing tax credit.
Yeah, and I think just to start winding this down, it really just circles back to it's doesn't sound like it's much simpler, even though we had hoped that point of sale would be easier to grasp and easier to obtain. It sounds like that's not going to start for a while. Um, and really, to me, again, just to not to harp on this, but the battery components thing. I found one article from Ford that talked about where they source
Hmm.
their battery components, but even that was murky because they wouldn't specify if it was for the Mustang Mach-E or the Lightning.
Sure.
Sometimes it would say both, sometimes it wouldn't clarify. And so I can see this being a source. I really, truly hope that somebody, whether it's electrek.co or, I hope that somebody, or even on Reddit, starts tracking these, and we have a reliable source of information so that, we don't fall in love with an EV, go to buy it, expect a point of sale credit, and then it's not there. That's my fear for all of us over the next calendar year.
Totally. So I do like Electrek's article, so I'm going to pull a screen share real quick just so we can look at it. And in case anyone's wondering about, like, because I get a lot of comments of people who just bought theirs, for instance, and are wondering if they're eligible. So this is their rundown of people who, until the end of the year, if you bought one of these vehicles, you should still be good to go, I believe is what this is the breakdown of. Can see if I can zoom in a little. Does that look okay?
Yeah, it's getting there. Is there a way to get rid of the chat just momentarily?
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, see ya. Oh yeah, good call. And I can zoom in even more here.
Cool.
So I actually mistakenly read this as the list of cars that'll be eligible for the new tax credit in one of my videos I just did. However, I think it still maintains a lot of truth to it, to the fact that other than the ones that exceed the price cap, which we'll have to talk about next, that would still be the case. So like the GMC Hummer on here obviously would not qualify once the new one kicks in, because it is hella expensive.
Right, yeah.
I see the Chevy Bolt. This is going to be a hit. I know for a fact it will. People who are interested in getting an affordable EV, this has been an issue. I think I've seen that Chevy already raised the price on these, I think a couple grand too. Don't quote me on that. I think it just read the headline, so I didn't dive into that. But I guarantee this blows up. We're going to see a lot of these if GM can actually produce them.
And does it specify on this webpage that these qualify because of where the batteries are sourced, or is this only based on?
No. So this is the existing until the end of the year.
Okay.
So it's not. It's looking at the qualifications for the remainder, the phase out, or whatever we want to call it.
Gotcha.
So I think part of that is that it has to be U.S. made or produced. I think, and that's why we have this like new list to look at. It is also a little weird, like why they'd even put these on here when they are at the cap, so they're not eligible. So I'd understand why it's a little unclear, but for our sake, we can still kind of dive into this. So Mach-E's, for instance, I think are still a great example of one that will continue to do well, because they did get a price increase in. Did they, Joe? Do you know?
The Mach-E?
I think it did go up just recently.
Yeah.
But not quite as much as the Lightning.
Well, let's see here. Yeah, I can pull up the page, but
Nissan Leaf also going to be a hit with this new tax credit. It's already affordable. It was the one of the first that were hitting home runs via being like a great affordable electric car, saving gas, actually doing a great job. Not as fun, obviously, as some of the other EVs, but definitely a cost-saving king. And then I think that someone's bringing up a great point, is the Model 3 and the Model Y were going to be the only ones eligible. And they're switching over the batteries on a lot of these, and I can't remember which ones exactly, but even some of these, it really depends, I think, on the trim level you get of these now, because not all of them, even though they technically meet it on paper, the batteries are made in China, some of them, I believe.
And let's quickly recap all the quick qualifiers. So if it's a sedan, it has to MSRP of less than 55,000. And this is for the new EV tax credit that just got signed.
Yes.
If it's a truck, van, or SUV, it has to be less than $80,000 MSRP, and it has to be assembled in North America.
Yes.
So for those, I don't know what percent of our 32 viewers right now are interested in the Ford Lightning, but it would appear right now that is good news for those of us that are interested in the Lightning. Unless they come out with something next week that says we're sourcing certain battery components from China until 2025. And that article that I found, I made a video about it, but I mean, I was seeing everything from Australia to Indonesia to Canada, which I mean, is obviously North America. But it was just interesting to see where all we were pulling from, or where all Ford was sourcing from. So we'll see.
Okay, we got breaking news here. No, not really, but I do have a better list for us to look at. So we just looked at the old recap of what was going on to this phase out period. Here is Reddit's kind of standing unofficial, they're calling it, list. It's an Excel sheet that has a breakdown of when the new tax credit hits, which vehicles will be eligible. And I think this is actually a great one to look at here. So I'm going to share my screen again. How's that look? Can you see that?
It's tiny, but
I'll zoom in. But
okay.
Overall, it's showing up.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead. I almost clicked end screen instead of get rid of the chat. That would have sucked. Okay, so you see what they're doing on here is, well, first of all, we have all of the qualifications, and we see the current versus the pending. So this is no longer pending. This is past. But what we have here is a great way to look at like the rules, like the core things. Is it a car under 55,000? Is it an SUV or truck under 80,000? Is it assembled in North America? Is 40% of the battery material?
Probably.
All of them are, yeah, maybe. So they did their best to research here, but this is exactly the point we were making at the beginning here is nobody actually knows, at least for now. And then it will say the actual refund you'll get and if it's better or worse than the current tax credit. So
well, and just to jump in again and get back on my soapbox real quick, like, you know how Tesla, back when they qualified for the EV tax credit, they would show you the price with the tax credit, and then you'd have to click a button. Like, it defaulted to here's your price with the credit, and then you'd have to uncheck the button. Well, I think if they're going to do that on their website, like, I'm hoping there's laws or something that come about in regards to advertising this in particular. They should not be allowed to advertise the price with the credit if they don't qualify, and they know they don't qualify.
This is potential savings though that it defaults to,
right.
And even without the tax credit, it'll default to that just with like the estimated gas savings you'll get, which is silly, and it always gets you pretty excited when you're pricing it out. Then you get to the bottom and you say, "Oh shit!"
Exactly.
I've said for a while that this was my dream EV, and I think it still might be. Sorry, this one.
Which one?
This is probably like the Model X Plaid. I think it's so cool. I don't know. We'll talk about that another day.
Oh, well, I have plenty of questions for you regarding, I don't know if you saw this on the Google Doc, but do you have any final thoughts on the EV tax credit before I segue us?
I really laid down the law with how much I hate that we are, how thrown together it is. I think that's my overall consensus, that combined with the uncertainty of everything. Like, it's all just like very, it's not like the tax credit is unclear. It's just unclear of like the qualifications. Like you've made that very clear as well. So it's like,
right.
It's a bummer. I guess it's not worth keeping to talk about, but the point of sale thing, it's going to be kind of a disaster buying a car in 2020 or an EV in 2023. I think it's going to be a lot of guesses. It'll be a lot of disappointment. And dealers are not going to know this stuff. We are all going to know 10 times as much. So even when it does move to a point of sale, it's going to take another 6 months just for them to adopt it. So it's going to be a mess for a while, which has me very hesitant of, I guess I'm grateful I'm not buying a EV right now. Because that would be pretty, I don't know. I just wouldn't know what to do.
Well,
but yeah,
I wish I was buying my Lightning right now, because at least we know how it works right now. But the moment January 1st of 2023 rolls around, I think we're going to see a slew of YouTube videos of like, I got screwed at my dealer buying this EV, and it's going to get a lot of clicks because that's going to be the reality. So I guess I don't want to call it breaking news, but my Twitter was blowing up today about this. And I'm not trying to blindside you. I'm sure you saw it as well. It's that Elon announced they are raising the price of full self-driving. Have you heard this?
I know there's been rumors about it for a while. I did not see this though. No, I've been moving a lot of stuff all
Right.
day, so I've not been online. But yeah, hit me with the details there.
Well, I'll try to pull up the exact tweet, which I struggle with because I'm apparently 80 years old. But it's going to be $15,000. So the immediate
Okay, so
reactions. Go ahead.
no, I was just confirming that's like $3,000 more, right?
Well, the people, the most vocal tweets that I was seeing in response were those people that reserved it when they reserved their Cybertruck, and it was like $7,000, and so
Yeah.
they were frustrated because they're like, I reserved it at $7,000, and now you're saying it's 15, and then other people were upset that they hadn't even achieved the right safety score to earn it, and now they're like, it's not my fault that you require, it's, I don't own a Tesla, so I'm on the outside looking in at this situation, but I know you did own a Tesla. So I guess I just wanted to do, I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, but did you do full self-driving? Were you part of that beta? Do you know people that have done it? And actually, I've seen a lot of videos popping up that are very similar to the one you did with like the blow up doll
Yeah.
testing. I've seen a ton of those this week because of the controversy surrounding if it'll run over a kid. And anyways,
Yeah.
I'll let you take it from here while I find the tweet.
Yeah, I'm bummed I'm not getting any views from that because now it's so popular to be doing those, and I did it like just a little too early. Now I've never had the full self-driving, so I guess I should be clear on that.
Okay.
But I'm very familiar with it. I spent hours and hours banging my head against the wall if I would purchase it. So I've seen so much content that I feel very qualified to talk about it.
Good.
And I think it is just totally not worth it.
Okay.
I
Well,
think
at the old price or the new price or both? I would imagine both now.
not even at the old price,
Okay.
not even when it was $10,000. So I think I've said this even on our last stream. It really only makes sense if you are just like driving like 300 miles a day on the expressway, because that's the only place I've seen videos of it performing really well. Like the beta where we can finally do city streets driving, it's like a miracle when they're like, dude, did you see that? I only had to touch the wheel 3 times.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, exactly. It's not there, and it's not going to be there for a very long time. And unless it's like I said, like you're on the expressway most of the time and you can do auto lane changes, and that's like something you really think would be worth it,
right?
Go for it. It's pretty cool, but it's just not worth, especially $15K. And to raise that again without a concrete deliverable is insane to me. It's like you're still, I don't know. Tesla's like really, I guess, bumming me out lately, if that's okay. Like, I don't know if maybe they're just, what's the word? I don't know. They're just, they have competition now, and they're bullshit. I'll just say it just won't fly anymore. Being able to say, hey, we made a new Cybertruck, come reserve it. But, oh, psych, you can't have it because it just doesn't exist. They can't do that anymore. And they can't keep doing this stuff with the buying full self-driving that doesn't really exist or partially exist. So I don't know. That's pretty firm. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you go in a second, but I just want to cover my ass because I know Tesla Mob will be here in a second. And I stand by what I just said, and I'm happy to hear your side of it, but they got to make some moves very fast to get back on my good side, is all I'll say.
Yeah. So the tweet from Elon reads, after wide release of full self-driving beta 10.69.2, price of full self-driving will rise to $15,000 in North America on September 5th. Current price will be honored for orders made before September 5th, but delivered later. And then he replied to himself and said, you can upgrade your existing car to full self-driving in 2 minutes via the Tesla app. So one thing I'm unclear on is that I thought, it's not like, oh, I want full self-driving today. I'm ready. I've got the money saved up. I'm going to do it. You had to achieve a certain safety score in your everyday driving to be invited to do the full self-driving. So I guess my question is, when he says you can upgrade your existing car, is he saying we're going to make it $15,000 but remove the safety score? Like, it's hard to gain any large amount of information from a tweet because it's inherently short.
Can I drop a conspiracy theory real quick?
Yeah, please do. That's what the podcast
Based
is
on
for.
what you just said, I wonder if they saw a dip ever since the tax credit started. They saw a dip of orders because people would wait to get their order till Tesla's eligible again. And for them to allow people to order still and get it at a cheaper price, this is a big stretch of a conspiracy theory because it's just full self-driving, not the actual vehicle. But I wonder if they're doing a push to get people to order so they feel like they're getting in. It's a very much a stretch, but I wonder if there's something going on there.
Yeah, and as I was reading it, I mean, there's a ton of responses to this tweet. So, and a lot of them were coming up, you know, because the other EV YouTubers I follow would retweet and kind of give their own opinion. But somebody kind of echoed that. They were like, "This is just you trying to light a fire under people to purchase it
That's
at
what
the
it feels
current
like.
price."
What a
Like
more eloquent way of saying it too, instead of what I mumbled.
No, you're good. Like a scare tactic. I just went to his Twitter, but I'm not as good at sharing as you are. So yeah, well, I mean, we can even scroll through some of these responses, just to see.
I'm so over Elon Musk's Twitter and the
Yeah.
people on it. That's a conversation for another time. Like, you
And
can't even find true responses. It's just
if you click on that first tweet, though, does it just open the thread of him and then everybody that, oh, you did that. You clearly did that. Well, and so to touch on what Steve said in the chat, thank you for engaging, Steve. He said, did they raise the subscription price? And actually, that was somebody else's question on Twitter is, are you also raising the monthly fee? I guess for those that were choosing to pay monthly versus the $15 or $10 or $12,000 outright. And I don't have an answer for you, Steve, because I don't think Elon responded to that tweet.
You know what the smoking gun is here for me? The fact that I think it's a cash grab is this line. This is such some Billy Mays shit. In just 2 minutes, you can download it from your app.
Oh yeah, the what is he? Flex Seal. He's slapping Flex Seal on the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, this is such like, I feel like, I know Tesla doesn't technically have a marketing team, but it feels like they're like, hey, mention how easy it is to upgrade, and then we'll get all the existing people to buy it. Because think about it, if you were on the fence of buying it, all those people just bought today. I bet this tweet right here made them like $5 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'm just at least.
I'm reading through some of these. So somebody asked Dirty Tesla, who's actually one of the guys who's uploading a lot of full self-driving content on YouTube.
Yeah, I've watched a couple of those yet. He
said, is at 10.69.2, is beta automatically going to any car with an appropriate safety score? Which is a great question, and I don't know.
It really is, because and I never really answered your question, but yeah, just to imagine you do upgrade and your safety score is like 60 and you don't actually get to use any of the features. Like, yeah, you get like the auto lane change and a couple other sprinkles of how do you do's.
Yeah.
You know what's the best part? Because I did have, I think when did I have it? I had something fixed on the Tesla and I had one for a day.
Yeah.
And it had the full self-driving on it. I never used it. I didn't even have it for a full day.
Yeah.
But the one thing I love is there's this thing called chime on green.
Oh, and it'll tell you when it turns green.
Yeah, when you're at a stoplight, it'll go bing whenever the light turns green.
That's pretty cool.
That was my favorite feature of the full self-driving. And it used to just be standard, which is crazy.
Well, and this segues nicely into the discussion that I am more qualified to talk about, which is just your opinion of full self-driving, even if you discount today's news about the price going up. Because even that, I've really dove headfirst this week into full self-driving YouTube content. And I just wanted to try to glean like my impression of it. Is it safe? Is it cool? Is it the future? Is it overpriced? Is it worth it? Would I feel safe knowing that my kids are out learning to drive around cars that are utilizing it? And I know you've probably gone down that rabbit hole too. I have to say I'm firmly on the fence because some of the things that it is capable of doing, I think we truly live in the future. But then there'll be really little things where it just won't go at a green light. And I'm like, that's the type of thing that would frustrate me if I was behind that vehicle, as another driver. One YouTuber described it as it feels like you're teaching a 16-year-old to drive. Because like you're in the car, you're not driving, but you have to be like overly attentive because this thing might make a mistake. So I don't know, have you ridden in a car of like a friend who's had it or anything like that?
Like, let's almost even take a step back. Like, let's talk about just like smart cruise control or smart follow cruise control. Have you what's your experience with those? We'll start there and work on it.
None of the vehicles I've owned have had like adaptive cruise, lane centering, like, so anything that comes on even that stuff that I just mentioned, which comes on the Lightning, or like lane centering does, will be my first time. So I have absolutely no experience with it.
Okay, so I've done quite a few. I've done Chevys, Toyotas, Hyundais. I don't know if Fords, because of Mach-E. Long story short is the one thing I think everyone's nailing is the start stop cruise control. That is the one thing. If I had to say what have we achieved towards full self-driving, I would check that one off the list. I don't feel like in all of those that I've drove, no, I'm saying it. I feel like it's conquered very well. What I don't think, and this is our next step, and we're not there yet, is the lane centering and or steering. We're just nowhere close, even in my Tesla, because that comes like standard autopilot comes with your Tesla. So I had that, and that was the best for sure. It really was a great job at it, but it was bad still. It would still try to take the exit when I'm, going on the expressway because it thinks that's the turn in the road. It would still, freak out because the paint is faded on the side and not know where the road is. And then it gets worse as you go down the line because like a Toyota I was just in, really bad at that. And Hyundai was pretty great, but what it would do, it would go bouncing in between the lines like this,
ping-ponging.
But it worked. It actually did a decent job.
One thing I've noticed just in scrolling through the comments on these videos of full self-driving is that it is as heated as any political argument I saw in all my years on Facebook. I mean, there are two very distinct camps where somebody will be like, clearly this isn't safe. Why is this even allowed on the road? And then somebody else will chime in and say, well, nobody's ever died and it's not documented that anyone's ever died. So like, you're silly to call it dangerous. And it's just, it's one of those things that I'm already kind of over. And if you scroll underneath Elon's tweet, I'm sure there's a lot of that happening under there. But yeah, like the kilowatts was the first video I watched this week. And he was like, first drive, full self-driving beta. And this was from like 5 months ago when it first went live, I guess, or first got an update recently. And it was scary. I mean, it like misses a turn. It takes him through the airport drop-off circle. And it felt very hectic. But I know that's just one data point out of thousands.
It's sort of a good summary of it, though, honestly. Like, I do think and I only say this because also I'm just viewing content but it's like the news is when people have like a successful ride, not when it,
right.
It should be the opposite. Happens. Oh, it didn't work this time. That's crazy. It didn't work. Instead, it's holy shit, I actually got it to work. And it's like, what's the goal here? So what I've heard though, and I've never done Super Cruise, and the Mach-E's that I've had did not have Blue Cruise. So I've actually not had either. But based on what I've heard is actually Chevy is doing a good job. I know they have an awesome partner with like a pretty cool startup. I don't know the name off the top of my head, who's doing autonomous driving. And they have Like I think they either acquired that company or are just working very closely with them. So Chevy, who I would say is the furthest behind in EVs, kind of
Hmm.
actually has probably the most exciting potential for it, believe it or not. And I think they're getting, they'll give Tesla a run for the money. Ford, I know the least on their roadmap. Can you speak to that other than just what Blue Cruise is right now? Like, do you have any thoughts?
Oh boy. Well, I think Ford, based on the YouTube content that I've watched in regards to Blue Cruise, Super Cruise, like I watched the TFL series where they did 10,000 miles up to Alaska and back. They have a lot of positive things to say about it, but I also think we have to acknowledge that is executing a fraction of what Tesla is trying to execute. So it's like
Hmm.
gold star for Ford for sure, and maybe they get an extra gold star for not trying to over deliver, like they're setting achievable goals.
That's a great point. That is a small thing to say, but also huge on paper. It really is.
Right, like maybe they get extra credit because they're not pushing the limit. And
Hmm.
everyone says that Tesla and Elon are disruptors, and so I know that's part of their persona. But Ford is like, here's what we can do safely, and the videos that I watch of them are very impressive because they're not trying to do too much. I mean, it's literally lane centering, adaptive cruise, eyes on the road, hands off the steering wheel. Like it seems like it's executing that very safely. Um,
Yeah, and it is kind of funny that all said and done, Blue Cruise and Super Cruise really is just close to what comes standard on a Tesla. So if I,
yeah,
had to fight for Tesla, Tesla kind of already has this, but not on lockdown. Like I said earlier, far from it. It's just
right.
not even close to being perfect. Like not even close. Rivian. I'd love to talk about the Rivian autopilot. Do you have any
I have very
feedback on
little. I feel
that?
like,
Yeah.
and this is a hot take that I'm going to borrow from someone else, but Rivian falls victim to something similar that Tesla does, where they've made their cars so fun to drive that every YouTube video I watch is about the driver experience enjoying driving the vehicle. And so they're not getting a
Uh-huh.
lot of airtime for their autonomy. Because their
Yep.
cars are so fun to drive, and like they're meant to be off road, and obviously you would never use autonomous driving in an off-road scenario. So to answer your question, no, I'm not very familiar with
Yeah.
their like autonomous driving offerings.
And maybe that's fine because we'd know if it was bad, that's for sure.
Yeah.
um, but speaking of maybe like a underdog or a new contender, I know a big thing we wanted to talk about today was Dodge, and you've been on top of this. So I'm going to let you take the lead here if you want to kick us off.
Yeah,
Um,
Larry, please feel free to cut me off, but I'll just try to do a quick recap of all 3 days
go for
of what Dodge called Speed Week. So on
it.
Monday, I believe, they debuted. It was kind of like closing the chapter on their internal combustion hot rods. So they announced a partnership with like a new performance company called Direct Connection. They're going to have 7 new trims that are kind of like swan song trims for the Charger and Challenger. But really, the takeaway from day one, they didn't talk about any EVs hardly at all. But what I found interesting is the order process for those internal combustion Chargers and Challengers is so different from what we've been experiencing on the EV space. It's literally they're going to make the cars, they're going to send them to the top muscle car dealers in the country, and you just have to go pay for it in cash. There's no reservation, there's no call ahead. And so I found that very interesting only because it's so different from what we're dealing with the Ford Lightning and all these EV pickups. Um, Day 2 is when they debuted their first electric vehicle, which ended up being the Dodge Hornet.
Hmm.
Um, they announced the Dodge Hornet as starting as under $30,000. So I was hyped. I'm like, okay, it's a little crossover. That's not usually my game, but then they've got the GT and then the RT. The GT is only internal combustion. The RT is a plug-in hybrid. And so they didn't announce the pricing for the Dodge Hornet RT, but I'm just going to assume it's 10,000 more. That's just me spitballing. Um, they also said that So on day 3, he was like, "We hear that you love the Dodge Hornet. 14,000 orders have already been placed." And so I
Wow.
called a Dodge dealer and I'm like, "How?" Like I got on the website when you announced it, and he said you have to come in and put
Welcome back.
Whoa. He said
I was watching the Hornet video. Sorry.
You're good. So apparently 14,000 people walked into Dodge dealers and put money down for Dodge Hornets.
Damn.
But also that's another weird like approach to how they're going to roll out their first EV. And just the last quick hit on the Dodge Hornet is that it only gets 30 miles of pure electric range. It's a little crossover thing that Larry and I probably aren't interested in, but and then finally on day 3 of Speed Week, which was Wednesday, they debuted the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT, which is what we're looking at right now.
This is the one I've seen, or that I got to look at.
And there you go, Charger Daytona SRT. Now
terrible naming convention.
Yeah, well, they in my understanding, Larry and I couldn't agree on this, but my understanding is that they announced this as a concept. So something like this may come to market in the distant future, but right now this is a concept because he wasn't able to talk about range. He wasn't able to talk about 0 to 60 times, but they did debut the most polarizing feature of the vehicle, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, Larry. It's that Fratzonic exhaust, which sounds made up, but it's is there a way for you to play the sound? I mean, it's pretty jarring.
No, I just exited it. You had a video queued up though, right?
Yeah, so
I'll talk about it while you pull it up because
so I don't have any sound on this, but
I mean we could talk about it because it literally just sounds like the grooviest muscle car there is.
How do I make that one big? There we go.
Yeah. So it was, this is the part where I heard it. And it just, it sounds like a nice, cool, juicy engine. And I bet you can, here's what it's cool. First of all, who cares? I don't know. Like, I get that people like want the feel of the muscle car that they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to like bash this for existing at all because if you want this, absolutely, now you have it.
Yeah.
But like as like it's their version of Lightning's, hey, it can charge your house. You know what I mean? It's just like a little marketing thing for them to do. I bet you could change the sound, which is cool. I bet like you could choose like your favorite exhaust sound and it'd be programmable.
Yeah, and it was so interesting having sat through a lot of the Ford, what do you want to call it, a news conference, live streams in regards to the Lightning, and then sitting through Tesla stuff. The vibe of this was so different. Like you could tell the CEO, Tim Kuniskis, it was very casual. These were only like 10 minutes long. Every day, each stream was only like 12 minutes long. And he even pointed out like that front bit of the vehicle, there's actually a spoiler there, like a front nose spoiler. There's an air channel. I don't know if any of these angles will show it nicely, but he was like, does it work? We don't know yet, but it looks cool. And that's what's important. And it was just so interesting to watch that. And yeah, I was disappointed to see that it has 2 doors because my current Charger has 4. That was one of the selling points for me. But I quickly did research and saw that all the old Dodge Charger Daytonas have 2 doors. So they're keeping with their heritage. But I do think this is finally getting into that space of like exciting, sporty EVs. Because like Teslas have always been fast, but they're 4 doors. And like, I don't know, like this and the Polestar. And I mean, can you think of any other like really exciting, sporty EV coupes that have been announced even yet?
No, but to your point though, is this has to be fast. It's got to compete with a Tesla or be half the price because like all this seems fine, but if this doesn't have performance, then it is, I mean, obviously, even if it's like 3.5 seconds, 0 to 60,
Right.
we'll say. It's not acceptable for something like this, I don't
Right.
think, because it's going to have a premium price tag, and it's going to want to match the competition. Otherwise, what would keep you from, like, the sound is not going to be a selling point to someone who just wants to go fast. If you're going electric, you know, what's going to steer you to this? That's the only doubts I have, is like, what does this have that some of the other more established EV brands don't? Like, Dodge doesn't have an EV on the market. Will this be their first one? And will they come out with a banger? Like, that's, you know, I need to know stats. It's so hard to guess.
Right. Well, and I did find it interesting, as you could tell that Tim Kuniskis, the CEO, was like trying to, I mean, he's making the sales pitch to every person watching because he knows they're all motorheads. Like, they're all, you know, petrol heads is what they're called. So he said, like, part of the reason we have to go electric is because we're all about performance, and we're not going to win any drag races in 10 years with an internal combustion engine. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I did think it was interesting the way he framed that. And even the Dodge Hornet, like, obviously I'm way more likely to buy that. He said that electric motor is going to give you this unique feature called a power shot. So if you need to, like, pass somebody on the highway, the wimpy little crossover motors, like, you can just use up unlimited battery storage to
That sounds
get
cool.
yeah, right. So we'll see. The Daytona and the Hornet both have that power shot feature, but all in all, it was interesting to be part of a brand completely, you know, starting to submerge themselves in the EV world. It was interesting to see that happen,
and not a minute too early. Like, they needed to do this yesterday.
Yeah.
Sorry, not a minute too late, as the expression goes, because they're doing their thing. Don't get me wrong. They're doing electrification. They have the plug-in hybrids in the Jeep realm, which is awesome. But we need to see something. Now, what I want to pose to you is kind of a two-parter here. One is, do you think, because I'm seeing the comments on that when I pulled that up, is people are pissed because they want their you know, muscle. They want the real deal. Do you think more people are upset about losing their, like, the Dodge boys are more upset, or do you think Mustang men, the Dodge boys or the Mustang men, who's more mad? The Mustang that went EV into like a SUV and they hate the new design, or the Dodge guys who just basically lost gas?
I think it's all about how fresh that wound is, and it's hard to compare because we're seeing them at two different stages of that transition.
Very true.
Like, I would say the Mustang guys have nothing to be ashamed of, having seen what a stellar vehicle that turned out to be. Like, I think there was an initial like gag reaction of like, this is not my Mustang. This is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
But then you fast forward to present day, you know, it's a practical car. It's a fast car. It's a techie car. Whereas I think the Dodge guys are just now going through that, like, just coming to terms with they can't get their Challenger, SRT, Scat Pack, whatever, or they can, but only for another year. But I also think it's a kind of a marketing strategy, like what we talked about with Elon and full self-driving. They are not, like, there are no questions. 2023 is the last year you can get an internal combustion Charger or Challenger. And
they're going to sell like crazy.
Yeah, it's a rallying cry to say, come spend a ton of money on one of these special trims, because these are going to be antiques in 2 years. Like, they're going to be, you know, supply demand. So I think they're going to make a lot more money on the on their internal combustion vehicles than they are the Dodge Hornet in the near future. That's for sure.
I think that's a solid point. It's going to sell really well for all these guys who hate it. I want to save this for another stream because I have so much thoughts on it, but it just like bleeds right into the question of, and I know you get these comments because I get a million of them, and it's like the people who just hate electric vehicles and like the EV netter people. And I just don't get how they can't understand that both are cool. You know, like I'm here admitting that, like, you know, I think there's still a lot of awesome stuff happening in the engine world, the ICE engine world. And, you know, EVs are also badass too. Like these people are so afraid that like someone's gonna knock on their door and take their V8 away when it's just so far from the truth. And I don't know. I think we could have I want to like gather all my favorite like comments of those people and we could like review them on a stream or something. I thought that'd be fun.
I'll tell you the easiest place to go is I was watching the Dodge live stream, and man, on day one, it's almost like they had an agenda. And so all the guys that were there day one were there for all the cool like internal combustion announcements. And I just tuned in and I was like, hey, are they going to announce an EV today? And it was just onslaught of like, get the hell out of here with your EV. So yeah, I think it's just like it's just like any opinion. My dad always says like, by the time you're an adult, if you don't like broccoli, like nobody's going to convince you to like broccoli. And I think that's it's just where we're at. Like if somebody's Ford versus Chevy, or like it's just one of those unfortunate tribalism things that we've settled into, where there's people that are hyped about EVs and people that for some reason are under the impression that they're going to ruin the world. I don't know.
Biden's going to take trucks away.
Right.
It's like, no one's touching you, man.
Right. So unfortunately, I think it's something that we're just going to have to deal with for the next 10 years that we're making YouTube videos about EVs, unfortunately.
Very true. Well, we're right at that hour point. Do you have anything else you want to cover? I think we went through the list pretty well, but
yeah. So one last thing is I called my dealer this week just for fun.
Okay.
In light of the price hikes, and I love my dealer. My goal is never to get on the internet and talk badly about them, but he wasn't like really aware that we were in the waves. He wasn't really aware of the price hikes. And so it was not a phone call that instilled hope in me. Like that they were, but it just, again, it goes to underline that they're kind of out of the loop with this whole process. And I just reiterate, I can't wait till we can just go on the internet and buy EVs from Ford.
I hear you. You know what you should do? You should just go ahead and move your reservation to Up By Me, and then we can do a live stream that day. We can do an in-person one of these.
Yeah. Hey, let's plan on it, man.
I do have a dealer I'm becoming friendly with. I'm still afraid to move mine, so I also don't recommend you to move yours quite yet, because I think I've heard very unclear things about when you move your dealer, exactly what happens, because, or at least for me, because I don't know if I was prioritized or not, and just like 100 other X factors I think I've already talked about.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid to move and where I'd end up at the new dealer. But honestly, they seem like good people. They're the people, not my dealer. I didn't even get to drive the Lightning at my dealer. I had to go through these other guys, which they were awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to move mine there. And I think he said after my video, he got like 15 people to actually move the reservation just from my video, which is crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which it is awesome, because I mean, I just hope he lives up to what he was telling me,
Yeah.
He was saying, yeah, whatever. Yeah, man. It's a wild week.
Yeah. Well, and what's up, Mitch? Just in time. He always seems to tune in right at the end there.
I know.
Larry, do you have anything you want to say regarding the podcast and our friends over there at Town and Country, or are we going to save that for another day?
Oh yeah, well, we're working on some times right now. I think stay tuned. We'll announce it on our feed, but we're trying to get that going for next week. I don't think we'll be on Sunday next week, as a heads up, but we'll announce that for sure shortly, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm excited. Oh,
okay. I wanted to make sure he was okay, but he said it's okay.
There you go.
I didn't want to just take the initiative, but yeah, we're gonna have that, I think we said on Tuesday, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, super excited. What a cool guy. I can't wait to make that happen. And I don't know. Mark your calendars.
Yeah. So wait, I will pull up my calendar just so we don't say the wrong day. So that would make it Tuesday the 30th of August.
That's correct.
we're going to be chatting with Mitchell Watts from Town and Country. So I've already got, Larry will tell you, I've already got like 20 questions on the Google Doc.
He's not lying. I went to our live stream doc and he's got a bunch of questions prepared. So it's going to be a thorough interview. I hope you're ready there.
Yeah, he better start doing his homework. But no, really excited to chat with him. And I think another great podcast in the books for us, Larry, tonight. We covered some exciting stuff, the Dodge EVs, the EV tax credit. So, yeah.
The Rivian news, I think, man, it was hard because I wanted to dive into both of them, but I also wanted to make sure we had time to get into all the stuff. So I think we covered it all, though. And everyone who's still here with us, thank you for bearing with us, because like we said, this still is our third of the live thing. We did a couple of these pre-recorded, and we're still getting used to being, or at least I am. I don't want to speak for Joe, but I'm dipping my toes into the whole live streaming.
We're getting better at it, though, I think.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here unless you have anything else to go out on.
No, I'm good. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sincerely. It's so great to, have people who care about what we have to say. I still can't get over that,
They'll learn eventually, Larry.
Yeah. Eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'll see you, dude.
Yeah. Later, guys.